And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Established in 1952, the Heart and Stroke Foundation has raised and spent more than $1.5 billion on heart and stroke research. During this time, the death rate from heart disease and stroke in the country has declined more than 75%. We begin today's Open Connection with Andrew Peirson of the BC Lions.
Growing up in an athletic family, my dad was still playing rugby when I was, young. Like I was watching him out there, rucking and getting his hands dirty. So he was my coach in hockey. He was out there doing stuff, going for runs. So talking about the incident that happened with the stroke, we were actually at my cottage up in northern Quebec, and my dad was a financial advisor. So this is right around 2008, 2009 in that time. So it's extremely stressful time for anyone for all people, not just, but, especially people that were in the financial markets that were, seeing a lot of red days. So my dad said, I'm taking a couple of days off. I'm going to go spend some time with the family. We were really looking forward to it too. We were already at the cottage. So dad was coming up for the weekend, taking a little long weekend. When he got up there, he was complaining of a headache, and that wasn't really different. He would get headaches here and there. That wasn't too out of the blue. But this one was really bad, where you could just tell he was completely out of it, where he was just like, he'd be by himself, just like, and then, oh, you were talking to me kind of thing, which it's like, wow, he's having a rough week. And so when the incident happened with the stroke, it was a Friday night. My brother, my sister, and I were on our way to a movie night at the local lake club, where they had Friday movie nights for the kids. We go watch movie, but have some candy, that kind of thing. And he was driving us, and he was kind of slurring his words at the time, which I was like, I get it. You're at the cottage, and I haven't seen you have a single beer since you've been here, or anything like that. So maybe there's nothing too crazy. I don't know. I'm not going to think too much of it. And so he was slurring his words, complaining of a headache, and he dropped us off like nothing happened. We went to the movies, and we came back. My dad, most of the people at the cottage were gone. Behind the scenes, what I didn't see is he dropped us off, came back to the cottage, and when he got out of the car, he started limping, and his motor functions on his left side weren't working well, and he tripped and fell on a root. We had family friends up for that weekend, and one of them recognized immediately, hey, Steve's slurring his words, he's complaining of a headache, and now his motor functions on his left side aren't working. He whispered over to my mom, hey, I think Steve's having a stroke. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. They took those actions. My dad got in the car, and they went to the local hospital in Quebec, not the Montreal one yet. They confirmed, yep, he's having a stroke, did measures to try to reduce what was already taking effect. He was already in the middle of it, and try to limit the damage that's already been done. And then he was transferred to Montreal. So it was a really weird time for me, just because, I got dropped off, came back home, and my dad was gone. No one really was telling me anything. So for, 2 to 3 days, no one really told me. They told me he tripped and fell, and he had to go to the hospital, and I didn't really know, because they didn't want to tell me just yet what actually happened until it got confirmed. Is my dad going to be okay? Is this something that, they didn't really have answers. So we found out a week later, that this is what was happening. And for me, it was tough, because I was studying to be a lifeguard. I was taking my bronze medallion, I think at the time, bronze cross, one of those things. So I'm learning that, hand up, I am studying signs of a stroke. But for me, it was more this is my rock. This is someone that's I'm thinking more of elderly people that were swimming or something like that. That was my thought process at the time. I didn't think that it could happen to someone that was active, my own dad, or anything like that. That didn't really raise any red flags for me. So that's kind of the message that I want to share, is that, hey, these are the signs, and we can go over them again so I can repeat them. And they're so important. We have an acronym called FAST with heart and stroke. So the F stands for face. If your face is drooping, a good test for that is having someone smile, and if they can't be symmetrical on their face, or if an eye is drooping, that's a good sign. A is arms, and this is something with my dad because he started like limping, and some of his motor functions on his left side weren't working. So if anyone asked him to raise his arm, what would happen is his left side, it's probably flip for the people watching, but wouldn't be able to lift as high. Right there's another one. The S is speech. So having someone, if they're slurring the words or their left side's kind of like, they kind of sound like they're intoxicated or anything like that, they're not pronunciating some words correctly. And the last one is T is time. Because at this point, those three things hit, that's checking, check, check. It's time. Time's the most valuable asset for someone that's having a stroke, is getting to the professionals that know what the course of action are. And I'm grateful that my dad's friend, Dave Hall, was there, that recognized it and said, hey, we need to go. Because if that didn't happen, and maybe my dad just said, hey, I just got to go lay down, then this conversation would be a lot different. So understanding that, hey, we got to make action now and be safe. Rather be safe than sorry at this point, because every second counts with strokes. So that's kind of the story about what happened with him. And the light on the other side is that they got him there in time enough that they could limit how bad it got. It was pretty bad. Don't get me wrong. When I went to visit him in the hospital, he had a breathing tube and everything like that. It was very scary for me. But that began his road to recovery. And it was an exponential road, and now it's kind of peaking at the top because he can walk for short amount of times, and we use a wheelchair for long distances. But it's the same old dad. And the whole time he was recovering, he had a smile on his face saying like, well, I can get a little better today. And I took that as someone seeing him every day. I was like, I got 2 arms, 2 legs, and I have an opportunity in front of me. I'm going to go make the best of it with a smile on my face. So I'd go out there and, try my best, make mistakes like we talked about, and say, I'll get better. And having someone in my corner that is going through something like that, I always said, hey, it could be worse. I can work harder. And then on the other side, having my mom being so supportive throughout this whole thing, a lot of light shine on my dad, and it's Father's Day, but I don't want to neglect the fact that my mom was right there the whole time, taking care of all of us.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. One of Andrew's favorite summer jobs growing up was being a golf course groundskeeper. He loved waking up early in the morning to make his coffee before a 7-hour shift. Then his day would be done around early afternoon. That's when he and his coworkers would go and play a few rounds of golf. Let us return to the conversation as Andrew shares how the idea of a charity golf tournament came to mind.
I worked at a golf course when I was young, actually. I think it was like 1 or 2 summers right after my dad had a stroke. I got a job. I stayed back to train and play football in Kingston. But in the mornings, I would be working at a golf course. So I felt, I work in the golf course, get there at 5:30 or whatever it was, work till 11:30, get some good hours in, and then I'd go play. And I definitely loved it. Fell in love with the sport, and a lot of my friends, it was a good opportunity to get out and have some fun too, and hang out with the guys. So right around university, we found that like some of my friends were going to Ottawa, Toronto. I went down to Erie, Pennsylvania to play football. So what we kind of decided is, hey, let's have one weekend in the summer where we try to all come back and we'll do this golf tournament. And I kind of looked around and said, hey, why don't we just all toss $15, $20 and try to raise some money for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. And that's been going on. I mean, since I joined the BC Lions in 2018, I haven't been. I went once in COVID. I was able to because we had to cancel the season. So I got back once, made my return, but I handed the reins over. My brother and some of my buddies now run it, and it's nothing too big. It's probably, it's big for our friend group. It's a hassle to organize, but it's a lot of fun. Get out there, have some fun. We try to get some sponsors and whatnot just to raise some money. But yeah, no, it's pretty good. And now with the Lions recently too, now that I'm kind of working in more as a veteran, I've been here for a while. We actually just did their first golf tournament here with the Lions on a I don't think it was a bye week. It was just a long weekend where we had a bunch of guys never golfed before. We probably 15 guys never touched a club. So it was great to get them out trying the sport, and two, it was great team camaraderie and everything like that. So love the game, and definitely able to raise some money for a great cause at the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Kingston's not the biggest city, so when someone kind of makes it to a high level at any sport, it's pretty cool for the smaller kids. At my time, I was like, hey, there's someone that went to my high school or a rival high school that's done it. Like, I can do it. So I remember, Brent did the reading, and I remember Rob came back, signed some of his player cards. I was coaching, minor football, I think, and I was just one of the coaches. But watching that, I was like, this is so cool. Like, how they come back and give back to their community. So that's something that I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I'm not really in Kingston too much anymore, but I try to get back to some of the teams that are there and again in the community and talk about things that we're really passionate about. Some of them, just to name off a few that we go into schools with, is Team Up to End Racism, where we kind of give solutions on how to deal with something that you might see. Be More Than a Bystander, breaking the silence on gender-based violence. So talking and just trying to say, like, hey, join our team and be more than a bystander. If you see something, say something and find your own unique way to make a difference. The Energy Champions, where we try to save energy. That one's tailored to a lot of the younger kids where, we're having a lot of fun with them and then, finding good ways that they can save energy. It's a lot of fun. Read, Write, and Roar, which is an older program that we haven't done in a while, but I really enjoyed because it's the power of reading. We go into a small younger grade and read a book, and then I can kind of talk about some of the stuff that I've spoken about. How, hey, if I did this, that same stuff that I talked about. So it's a pretty cool, like you said, coming full circle moment for me, because here I am going into my 5th season, and all the off seasons I've been in BC, I've been able to do that and speak to, I don't know how many schools now. It's probably like 500 schools. Like, it's crazy. So I get a lot of passion. I get a lot of intrinsic return from it. I really enjoy it, and I think the students really enjoy the opportunity, especially when we go to like some of the more rural areas of British Columbia too. That's really cool too, because then I don't know, like, we go to next door here, they might get the Canucks or lots of visitors. When we go out to some other places, it's pretty cool when they get, hey, the BC Lions are in town. What?
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. To be a professional athlete, you need to live and breathe the game. The journey won't be all smooth sailing, but your passion will help you power through the negative and challenging moments. Let us return the conversation as Andrew shares his reaction when he found out he was going to play for the BC Lions.
It's one of those things, like, I worked my butt off to when I got the invitation to come to the regional combine. I was like, here we go. Like, I didn't think I was going to be selected, since I am kind of on the smaller side for offensive line, my position. I was like, here, I got my opportunity. I started working. I was working hard already, but like, this is time to turn it into overdrive. I got a couple months to prepare. I went to the combine. I think I did okay, but it wasn't, you're always hard on yourself. And I was like, all right, I did my thing. And then draft night comes, and I'm down in Pennsylvania. So I have, probably call it 30 people at the bar watching this thing happen. And my name never gets called. It goes through the whole thing. And, it's just one of those things, like, hey, I did the best I could. That's what I was telling myself at the time. It's like, hey, the best I could. I have no regrets. Like, I sit here as someone that went through the whole draft and was like, you know what? I don't think there's anything I'd change. I tried my best. I did my best. I left it all out there, and that's now time to move on with the rest of my life. And then 2 days later, my agent calls me and says, hey, the BC Lions want you to sign with them and come to camp. And that was like, camp's in like 7 days, maybe, like 6 to 7 days. I'm like, okay, like, let's go. I'm freaking out now, because I'm like, oh my God, I get my shot. I get the opportunity I wanted, with a little chip on my shoulder too, because I'm like, no one wanted to draft me. Like, watch what I can do. So I went out to training camp, and I was, I told myself I'm not going to be anything that I'm not. I'm going to be the same person I've always been, just like my dad, like smiling through the whole process. If I mess up a rep, smile, learn from it, and try to get better. Because that's, as I'm older, being through some training camps, that's the thing coaches want to see, is that, hey, you're not making the same mistakes. You're learning. You're growing. There's potential here. So that's what I try to focus on at the time, not really knowing it. And I remember, to kind of finish this, it was, cut day. I went through this. I didn't play in the first preseason. I was like, I'm definitely getting cut now because I'm not playing. And then the last preseason, I think I played the last 3 series of the game. So still not really a significant amount of playing time here. And I was just happy that I got to put the jersey on it. I was on the field. All my friends were at home sending me videos screaming like, there he is, there he is. And the next day, I get a text saying, can you please come into the locker room? And I'm like, well, here we go. Like, it's been fun. And I get in there, and there's 10 other people in the locker room. And I'm like, 10? Oh my gosh. The practice roster is 10 people. I made the practice roster, and I'm buzzing at this point. I'm like, no way I did it. So it seems, looking at it now, and, someone that's, I'm going into the season as the left guard starter, to look back on the experiences and see how an attitude, just that, hey, every day I'm going to try to get better and try to do it with a smile on your face, even when you're having tough days, it can go a long way.
How was your reaction when you told your folks?
I want to say emotional, because half of you is not, you're told to say you're not surprised and expect it, but everything was against me. We drafted 3 offensive linemen in the draft. We had a veteran group of guys that played in the league for many years. I didn't get the reps, but as an athlete, you're always like, oh, I'm that guy. And I'm thinking that, but at the same time, you have that little kind of the devil on your shoulder saying, hey, be realistic. This is, you're not that guy yet. So when I told them that, hey, we did it, it's never been me, I have such a great support group back home, and my girlfriend's amazing, and all these people, it was never just me. So to tell the people hey, we did it, and that was pretty cool, because a lot of people have sacrificed a lot for me, and it was pretty cool to say, hey, we did it. But also I knew that, hey, at any moment this could be gone. That I could walk in the next week and they could say, hey, sorry, we got someone else here. Yeah, so it didn't work out, and I didn't have any tape or anything like that. So, I know the realities of the sport, and so I knew that, hey, take this moment, enjoy it, embrace it, smell the flowers. But when 2 days from now, when practice starts, it's time to bring the lunch pail to work and get going.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Generally speaking, people with learning disabilities are of average or above average intelligence. There often appears to be a gap between the individual's potential and actual achievement. In this final segment of Open Connection, Andrew shares how he was able to unlock his educational potential once he received the proper evaluation.
As I started figuring out how my brain works, I started having fun with it. And when I went off to university, I dual majored in finance and entrepreneurship with a minor in marketing. And I was, graduate mega cum laude or whatever. I was doing well for myself. And so when football came, I knew that any moment it could be gone, and I'd have to have some sort of idea of, or steps in place that say, okay, football is no longer a thing. What's the next step? And kind of the school stuff off, not really thinking about it, knowing that, hey, this might be in a career now, kind of getting to that. And then 2020, our season gets canceled. And right away it was like, what am I doing? If there is no more CFL, at the time I wasn't really sure. So I said, okay, well, why don't I use this opportunity? There's no CFL season this year. Why don't I take kind of a first step to prepare myself whenever or if ever my career ends? Because it's inevitably going to end, but when? So I had a passion for finance. My dad was in personal finance. I kind of like the more team aspect of like corporate. And one thing that I thought, I went to school down in Gannon University in Erie, Pennsylvania. If I apply for jobs, they might see me as a guy that went to a small school in Pennsylvania, a football player. I needed something that would be like, hey, this is a universal exam that gives me a little credibility that, hey, I'm not just a football player. So the CFA is Chartered Financial Analyst. It's a global exam taken on specific dates throughout the year, only in small windows. Basically, there's 3 levels to it. Level 1 is essentially just in-depth finance. Like everything that I learned in my first year my 4 years of university finance was put into a 4-hour exam. So you kind of have to study. They recommend you study for like 250 hours. So it's a pretty in-depth exam. So I passed that one during COVID, which I was pretty happy about. And I actually found my results in training camp because I took the exam, and then I think like 3 weeks later, I went to training camp. So that was pretty funny because I was like, I'm in football mode now. Football's back, and I got the email. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And looked at it, and I passed in the top 10%. So being back in football, with this job, it's pretty high stress, high time commitment. I didn't really want to be in, trying to balance 2 different things. I wanted to focus on football and try to smell the flowers and enjoy this moment and give it all I have while I'm still doing it, instead of trying to balance 2 pretty stressful things at once. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll take my level 2 probably after football and deal with that kind of later on. But it's a good first step. It doesn't expire. Hopefully get into something in finance and probably corporate finance. I have ideas. This Father's Day, we wanted to remind people that, that this can happen to anyone. It's scary. You don't really like to think about these things, but understanding the signs is important. It's a very small thing just to have in your back pocket that, hey, if you know it can happen to anyone, and hear the signs, the fast face, arms, speech, and then time to act. Just remember that little thing can ultimately help save the loved ones around you. So, and with that, happy Father's Day. I hope everyone enjoys their time and tune into BC Lions this season. I think we're going to have a really good season. A lot of veteran guys, a lot of fun dances. We're gonna have a very entertaining year, and hopefully make it out. If people can make it out to a game, wave and say hi to me as well, and I'll interact with people as much as I can.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.